All right, so we're going to start with 6-4, and I'll just read that. When you have a savings account, your bank may mail you a monthly or quarterly account statement. The account statement shows all the deposits, withdrawals, and interest credit to your account since the last statement date. So we did this with checking account, and now we're going to do it with savings account. So it's pretty similar. You have your new balance, which is your previous, plus any interest, plus any deposits, subtract withdrawals. So Amy Bentley received this savings account statement below. After checking her passbook and copies of transactions to be sure all items have been recorded, she checks the calculations. What is the balance in her account on April 1st? All right, so we're starting with a beginning balance, and we're looking for her balance here. Here's the previous balance. Okay, this is what I was looking for. So this is where we're starting. The previous balance was $784.15, and that's where we're adding. So we've got $784.15 plus, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Okay, plus 120. Trying to find the best one so I don't have to keep moving it. I'll just go here. All right, plus 120. Oopsies. So if you have, I'm going to hit this. If you have a syntax error on your calculator, that means you typed something wrong. Doesn't mean you did it wrong. So try to get in the habit of hitting go to instead of quit, and then it'll go to that error. Don't clear it because that'll delete everything, so you just want to delete it. So that was plus 120, so that's how they got the 904.15, plus 32.53, so that's how they got 936.68. This is a withdrawal, so that is going to be subtracted, so minus 20. So then we're at 916.68. And then the interest. Okay, interest is money you earn on the account. It's not a fee. So you're going to add your 1307. So that is 929.75, and then another deposit of 62.25. So puts her at 992 even. Okay, so that is the new balance that she has. Okay, so why doesn't everyone go ahead and do number 2? Go ahead and do number 2. And write them as you go. Okay, so pretty straightforward. Make sure you look for the previous balance. That's where you start. You're adding the deposit I made on the 1st. You're adding the deposit I made on 8/23. Not as many deposits and withdrawals from your savings account. Typically, your checking has a little bit more movement. And then your interest, you earn more on a savings account because your bank can kind of count on that money staying put, and it usually does. And then there's 650.10 for your final. So make sure you're just kind of doing it step by step on your calculator. Start it, add, subtract, add. Alrighty. Okay, so here's one more, and then we're going to do this meaty simple interest in 6.5. So here comes our initial balance of $837.37. I'll clear out my way here. $837.37. Withdraw $525.90. So $311.47. Deposit $246.36. Now I'll just transfer between accounts, so I won't necessarily. We used to have to physically withdraw and deposit without online banking, but now online banking, like, I'll transfer every paycheck. I'll try to transfer some into my savings, so it's a little more easy to do right online there. But I do jot it down in my checkbook. Alrighty, so that's the final that you're ending up with, $465.52. So go ahead and do the last one, and then we're going to talk about the next section, which is a little bit not a repeat. It's our first intro. Alrighty. Okay, so here is this last one. So I just want to talk about a couple things. Your previous balance you start with. This person, so this is January to June, so this is 6 months. Notice on the 15th, all of these interest dates are on the 15th. So it stands to reason that this one was $825 because there was $640 in the account. Okay, and then another $361 based off that. But then when they took out $520, your interest earned for that month is only on that $132. So that's why the next interest was only 63 cents. Obviously, the more interest is on the higher amount. So that is what the next section leads to right away. All right, but on a Canvas test, you know, you want to be careful because if you had to fill out every single screen, if you kind of like accidentally subtracted instead of added, that would mess up your next total, just like it would if you're reconciling your bank statement. Okay, so that is the end of 6.4. Any questions? Okay, I know we had it with the checkbook. So we're going to go to simple interest. Simple interest is where we're getting a little tougher with the math. So just have your calculator nearby, and we're kind of doing the same thing every time. It's just long. There's a lot of charts to fill out. So when you deposit money in a savings account, you are permitting the bank to use the money. The amount you earn for permitting the bank to use your money is called interest. The principal is the amount of the money earning the interest. And the annual interest rate, which you will see that acronym APR. You probably see that all over the place. APR is an annual interest rate or annual percentage rate. Annual percentage rate. But here we're just going to call it rate. It's sort of a mix-up of like AIR, but anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the percent of the principal that you earn as interest based on that 1 year. Time is always measured in years. So even though you get, like, let's say it's this, you got this monthly on the 15th, this person got it, looks like on the 30th, it is an annual interest rate that they divide by 12. Okay? So just so you know that, you have to kind of remember that there's 12 months a year, and sometimes if it's down to the day, because there is some interest that's earned by the day, so then you would have to get to the 365 days. So there's 365 days a year, and there's 12 months in a year. There's 52 weeks in a year. So it depends how your bank would do that, how they would break it down. Okay. Simple interest is interest paid only on the original principal. Okay. So if you have a highlighter or you were highlighting any of those words, I think mine is just orange. So you've got a couple new interest, principal. We'll just call that the rate for our purposes here, and then simple interest. And then that annual is kind of just doing what I circled. That time is always measured in years. Okay, so simple interest, this is like your new best friends here. Simple interest is equal to principal times rate times time. And then the new balance is the principal, like your original amount in your bank account, plus the simple interest. Okay. All right, so let's dust off the cobwebs when we have a percent. So a percent, so a quarter is 0.25, so 1/4 is 0.25, 1/2 is 0.5. What am I missing? 3/4 is 75 cents, so that's 0.75. All right, so anything else is kind of already in that range. You'll seldom see a third. Sometimes you might see an eighth, okay, and an eighth is 0.125. A lot of stock markets are traded in eighths, but a lot of interest rates are in fourths. But an eighth is half of a fourth, so that if that's easier for you to remember, it's like you're cutting a quarter in half. Okay, so this is your original amount. So original amount is the principal. The rate you have to convert to a decimal. Here, I'll make this a little bit bigger so that you can see what I'm doing here. Convert to a decimal. Time is always in years. Simple interest is principal times rate times time. So I will do PRT, principal rate times time. And then the new balance is going to be the principal plus the simple interest. So I'll just write that out. I have some space. All right, so it's sort of like what we did on the statement, but the interest was already done for you. Okay, so I'll just kind of pause here if you want to jot any of that down before I start some of the math. Okay. Mm-hmm.
So if I convert that, so you just need to put like 1.25.
So the first one, yeah, let's start. My coffee is terrible today. That's why I just took a sip of. Ew. All right. So let's do the first one. So this is going to be, 1.25%, which means you're going to go boom, boom, 2 places to the left. So I'm going to do 2 years. So I'm going to do 1625 times 0.0125 times 2. If I were making this, I'd make this bigger for sure. I'd just scrolled this over. So 1625 even times 0.0125 times 2 years is $40.63. I feel like pink had the biggest pop, maybe blue. So that's just interest earned for those 2 years, which isn't much, right? I mean, this is a relatively small amount, but you let it sit for 2 years. So typically savings account have very low percentage rates, and that's because you have access to that money. So the bank can't count on it necessarily, whereas a certificate of deposit, which is a CD, which we'll talk about in the next unit, is you can't touch that money, so you'll make more. Maybe you'll make 5% or 6%. So we'll talk about what the varying percentages are, but you're not going to earn as much. That's why these don't get too high on a savings account. But you'll earn more on a certificate of deposit and even more on stocks. But what can happen with stocks is you can also lose that money. So even though stocks you can make upwards of, 18%, 20%, but you could also lose that. Whereas this is guaranteed money. So the new balance, I'm going to take my 4063. So I just kind of rounded this without reminding you that when you round, so 0.625, that's going to bounce up to 0.63. So remember, 5 or more. I'm going to make this a little bit darker maybe. There you go. So when I add, I'm going to add 4063 plus 1625. So 1625 plus 4063 is 1665.63. Okay, so let's do another one. So this one's already in a decimal, so I just have to move it 2 places. So I'm going to have 3250. I don't like to use X for times, so that's why I'm using parentheses. But if you're using X and you can keep track of it, that's fine. So there's just not a lot of workspace. So I've got 3250 times 0.02125. You're not rounding here. That's the whole thing. Times 3 years. All right. So on my calculator, I've got 3250 times 0.02125 times 3 years is $207. And then I'm going to round here, and that 8 is going to get bumped up to a 9. So that is 207.19. So then when I add, I'm going to add, clear, 207.19 plus 3250. So don't forget, you have to round the interest and then add that to the amount. So if you need to like show that, again, there's just not a lot of workspace. I apologize. But if you can follow your own, like, you know, tell yourself that it's the principal plus the simple interest at the top. You don't have to put a $sign, 34.57.19, but just know that it's money. Usually we type one in there, but we didn't. All right, so why don't you do the next 3, and then I think we'll go to the board. Yeah.
3 months, will you just put that in my calculator?
Oh, gosh, yeah. No, let me do that one with you. So hang on a sec. So this, I'll just show this one. This is, don't forget to change this to a decimal. So 750 times 0.0305 times 2 years. So 750 times, oopsies, I just hit plus. So I'm going to go over it, times 0.0305 times 2 years is 45.75. I love when it just works out nice and even, so I don't have to worry about rounding. And then don't forget to add that to 750. So 795.75 is that total. Okay, I think I'm going to go to orange again just to kind of make some differentiation between the rows. Okay, 3 months is 3 out of 12, so that's 1/4 of a year. So this is huge. This is huge, huge. You're okay here, back to months. You're okay here. You got it. So now, if it's already in decimal of years, you're fine. But if not, if you have to convert it, now 12 months, don't multiply by 12. This is 1 year. So you're just going to multiply by 1. 1 year and 7 months. So when you multiply, it's 1 and 7/12. So let's look at that down here. If you do 7 divided by 12, this graphing calculator, I can change a math to a fraction, but that's all it's going to give me is 7/12. Okay? So you can just keep that, but then you're going to add 12 months. So the total fraction here is going to be 19/12. So we even have to bring it back to, like, you know, sort of junior high math there with adding fractions. All right, Do you love my engagement today, Miss Nelson?
Happy Thanksgiving, people.
Happy Thanksgiving! All right, so let's go back to Elijah's question. So, 805.50 times 5.5% times 1/4. That is what you're doing. All right, so go ahead and do that on your calculator because then we're going to go to the board. All righty. So, that's where you have to be really, 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 really careful with how much interest you're earning because time is always in years. All right, so I'm going to do 805.50. Sorry about that. Times, now remember, boom, boom, 0.055 times, and here's where it's just 1/4. Now you can do parentheses 1 divided by 4, or you can do 0.25. It's up to you. But the interest earned is $11.08. So I rounded that. So I don't want to have to keep talking about rounding, but it's so important that you guys get that down. So 11.08 plus 805.50 is 816.58. Okay. So I'm going to put you guys up at the board. Okay, if you're watching this as a video because you're absent, then it's the end of that. So your homework, after we check the board, is 6.3 and, no, 6.4 and 6.5. Okay, so homework is 6.4 and 6.5 in their totality. Make sure you have a calculator.